Heartfelt story of Mark Herzlich and his road back to the National Football League. Mark, many of us know the story of you, an incredible story, diagnosed with cancer, Ewing sarcoma.
Yep, Ewing sarcoma, yep.
And tell us about that, because for those who don't know what Ewing sarcoma is, explain that.
It's a bone cancer, so it starts in the center of your bone, and like any tumor, the cells divide and it grows. I felt pain, we got an MRI on my leg, and it showed up, but it was only until a few days later where we did CT scan of my lungs and stuff to see it didn't spread at all.
And it hadn't spread, it was in your femur bone?
Yep, my left femur. If it had traveled to my lungs, it would about a 10% survival rate, and then if it hadn't, it's about a 70% survival rate.
Take us through that experience when you found that out.
When you're on the top of your game, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, feeling great, getting ready for next season, and then to go into the doctor's office after spring ball and being told, oh, by the way, it's a feeling where my whole world was taken away within 20 seconds, and it was tough. The first thing I thought about was, when am I going to play again?
That was the first thing you thought about.
When
am I going to play again?
When am I going to play again?
When you hear that news, and you want to look forward to beating this new opponent, where do you get your strength from?
My athletics, football, running out of the tunnel at Boston College, that was my end goal. When I had a bad day in chemotherapy, when I was sitting in that chair for 6 hours with 1-inch needle right in my chest, bag dripping from over my head, that's what I thought about.
When that oncologist said, hey, this is what it is, what plan did he say? We have to go through this, this, and this to rid yourself of cancer.
Well, he told me I would go through about 6 rounds of chemotherapy.
Immediately?
Immediately. I started 7 days later. After 2 months, they would go in a surgery, remove my femur, an inch below the tumor and an inch above the tumor, and then they would put in either a titanium rod, or they put in a cadaver bone in placement of it.
And why did they choose the rod?
If I got that surgery and got my femur removed, I would not have been able to run ever again. I would have not been able to play football, and I would have been in a full body cast for 6 months. I said, what other options are there? I don't want to do that. That sounds miserable. So I opted for radiation.
So how many months and weeks of chemo and radiation did you go through?
It was 50 rounds of radiation, so 5 weeks. I would go in morning and night for 5 weeks, 5 days a week, and it was not fun 5 weeks, I can tell you that.
Did you stay home?
I did. I stayed home for most of it. The day after I was diagnosed, one of my best friends, Zach Majot, grew up with him, played basketball with him. I called him and I said, Zach, I got some bad news. He's like, what's going on? And I said, I was diagnosed with cancer yesterday. And Zach is the type of kid, he's always at the Jersey Shore, at the beach. He works down there during the summer. And he told me, he said, Mark, I'm not going to the shore this year. I'm going to be with you for every single treatment you have this entire summer. And sure enough, Zach was at my house every morning at 7 a.m., drove me into Philadelphia, sat with me while I got chemotherapy. People will look at my story, my life, and say, that's amazing. But to me, I look at Zach and I say, that's amazing. What people sacrifice for other people is what I've learned, and I will always be grateful, because a lot of why I'm healthy today is because of him, and that he was there for me when I needed him.
So after 5 weeks, Mark, how did it show that it was improving?
Yep. They got
another remission, what?
Yeah, it was gone.
Gone?
At that point, it was gone. It had worked, and, it was healthy.
At what point did you start, instead of just fighting for your life, basically, thinking about, hey, I might have a chance to get back on the football field?
Well, that point was from the beginning. I always, in my mind, believed it, but the first time the doctor told me, they put a titanium rod through my femur. So they didn't, instead of taking out my femur and putting a rod in.
Yeah, you don't have any scars, do you?
I do.
Let me see.
I do.
Can you show me?
Yeah, I can show you. All right, so right here is a bolt that goes through here, holds the pin in place. And right here is another bolt going through. And as you can see, there's some discolor.
There's bolts in there right now?
There's bolts in there, and they'll stay in there forever. And then right here, there's a scar where they put the titanium rod down through my hip.
So that rod is this long?
All the way down like that.
Okay, so how does it feel? Is it different than your other leg?
It's not. At the beginning, it was stiff. I couldn't really, get full bend in my leg, and that was the biggest part of the recovery process for me, was getting the flexibility back. And then once I got that back, then I could strengthen it again.
So when you're done with your radiation, your treatment, your rod is in there and it's in place. It's all bolted down.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about your rehab and your recovery and your training since then.
One thing that radiation does, it takes your muscles and basically glues them to your bone. I had to go get deep muscle therapy done.
What is that?
It's like a deep tissue massage type thing, but what they're doing, instead of massaging, they're going in and ripping your muscles off of your bone with fingers. And so it's very, very painful. I was on the table holding on for dear life, screaming. And this woman, Ellen Spacuza, she
says,
up,
here, let me rip your muscles off the bone.
Exactly. And she has a titanium thumb. So
what?
Right through, she has no bone right here in her thumb. It's just a titanium rod running through it because she shattered it. And so when you have a titanium thumb digging into my titanium leg, it was wild, but it got it done.
New interesting friend, Teddy Bruschi, who went through a stroke.
Yep.
Talk about your relationship and your contact with Teddy.
The illnesses were different, but I could see such parallels between my story and his story, where
like what?
Comes out of nowhere. You just get struck by something out of nowhere. He came off, a Super Bowl season and great season, and then all of a sudden he's in his hotel room and just starts feeling pain and has a stroke. That's the same thing with me. I had a great season, came off that, and just out of nowhere something hit. Ironically, he called me on September 29th, which happened to be the day that I was told I didn't have cancer anymore.
Really?
And one piece of advice he told me that night, which I will never forget, he said, "Mark, be proud of being a survivor."
Yeah, what does that mean to you?
Do everything you can do to help. And
to help
people. To help with whatever you can. I went through it, and I was fortunate enough to come out on the other side okay. So at Boston College, we started a chapter of Uplifting Athletes, which is a charity organization run by the football team in order to raise money for Ewing sarcoma. And over the course of the season, we got to raise $270,000 for Ewing sarcoma research, which was unreal.
But that's not the end of the journey. You're just getting started.